Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us for Distant Lands, a discussion of landscape works at the first ever virtual edition of the Other Art Fair Sydney. My name is Bethany, and I'm a curator with Saatchi Art, the presenting partner of the Other Art Fair. I'm joining you all from Los Angeles. Today, I'll be speaking with three noteworthy artists on exhibition at the fair, all of whom were chosen for their unique approach to concepts of space and place, both imagined space and real, and both near and far away. So we'll be hearing today from a landscape painter, a collage artist, and an aerial photographer on their practices. So I think we should go ahead and get started. I'm going to be, here we are at the entrance of the fair, and I'm going to jump over to room 1. All right, here we go. And I'm going to use, we have this very handy dandy list of artists. So you can select an artist here for those of you who are exploring and go straight to that artist booth. Today, we are going to start off our tour with Cheryl Richardson. She is a landscape painter based here in Sydney. Cheryl, would you like to come on and join us?
Okay.
Hi.
Hello.
So great. Hello. It's so good to see you. I'm glad this works.
Yes. Great to see you.
Good to see you. Yeah. So, so to start us off, here we are at your booth. Can you just tell us a little bit about your background as an artist and your journey to where you are today?
Well, I studied art at school, always loved to draw as a little girl, had a brush and a colouring in pencil in my hand. Then as a young woman began watercolour class after watercolour class. And through that period, I started Chinese brush painting. And about 18 years ago, I began painting with acrylic. And I just love it. Can't get enough of it. And it's become a passion for me. And every part of my life really revolves around painting now.
Yeah, and now, so I understood you have a pretty extensive background in Chinese brush painting, but can you tell us a little bit about the works that are on display here today?
Sure. So the top one, centre back, is a painting of an area just beyond our beautiful Blue Mountains in New South Wales called Little Hartley. And most recently, I always painted with windows in my artwork, and I wanted people to imagine stepping inside of my canvas and imagining what lies beneath. So, but more recently, I've started to see a lot of animals and flowers in my works, and frankly, I have to hold myself back because the animals are sort of taking over, but they're mystical creatures, so to speak. So this piece I spent a lot of time on my preparation and like to build up a surface to quite a smooth surface before I start working. And often if I've done the subject many times before, as I had in this piece, the execution can be quite quick. And I like that because it's fresh and very spontaneous, you know.
Yeah, I was going to say, you definitely, with Cheryl's work, there's this really strong sense of movement and looseness and free expression with the brushwork. And I feel like that might be influenced by your training in Chinese brush.
Definitely.
Tell us a little bit about that.
So I accidentally ran into a Chinese brush teacher. She was absolutely extraordinary. And I started private classes with her. For 10 years, I did those. And during this period, I learned how to hold the brush, how to load the brush, all of the brush strokes and all of the rules, and there are many. It was a very, very strict and tight regime, and I think that's why I learnt so well with her. And there's no doubt in my mind that the evidence of that is coming through today in my work. My work can be quite brushy and loose, and I tried actually to use a palette knife, but I always come back to the brush because that's where I'm most comfortable. And I like to let it dance and dot around the canvas and just sort of move in and out, if you know what I mean.
Yes, I was going to say, I love how some of your brush strokes, I think dotting the canvas is a good explanation for it. That definitely comes through with the finished work.
Yeah.
This sort of looseness and this patchiness. And
so that piece actually does have an animal in the foreground.
oh yeah.
He's there. There he is.
Is it this green figure here? So
they're quite unusual shapes, but I just, as I said, I have to hold myself back because I see so many of them. But
well, I was actually going to say this is an element of your work that I wasn't aware of, are the animals lurking in there. But you might notice from this work that we were just discussing, the title is "There's a Bear in There." So
right,
that's definitely so that's something for viewers to look out for. Sort of explore your works up close and see what unusual shapes might actually lurk there. So I know, so can you tell us a little bit about your process? Do you typically paint plein air or from photo references?
Both. Generally in plein air, I'll do a quick pencils. I do a lot of pencil sketching, followed by watercolors. I've always done a lovely little small watercolor. And then I'll go back to the studio usually, and all the good work happens in the studio.
Right.
I'm not a big fan of insects and heat, so I find being on plein air quite, for a long period, quite hard for me. But then usually I'll start with two ways I'll go about it. I'll start with a very, as I said before, worked up canvas, so many layers of glazing and gesso and really interesting background with different colors coming through, and I'll get my landscape to work in around that quite often. So it makes it a very interesting outcome. The other way is to just pour on undiluted color at the very beginning onto a white canvas, and those really fresh, pure colors, I try and keep a lot of them coming through at the end for the end product. So they lift the work and create a lot of highlights, I think.
Yeah, I think that when you're looking at Cheryl's work, you can see that there are some almost luminous layers that come through. So I think the buildup definitely comes through in your work. And I know that travel is an important part of your work. So I'm wondering if you could share maybe a location or a particular trip that was particularly meaningful for you in your work.
Well, most of these works are from New South Wales.
Okay.
I have travelled extensively, but last year with COVID, I decided that I would revisit a lot of subjects that I'd worked on previously. And I found actually that was exciting in the end, because I was just taking out sections of paintings and reworking them with a real looseness and confidence. So especially that one there, that's a farm. So I'm introducing a lot. I like to work with a lot of pink, and I'm introducing a lot of pink into my work. So that was actually just a section of a much larger painting.
Wow.
So it's very freeing to be able to do that, I think.
Yeah, that's amazing to hear. That was actually my next question, was going to be how COVID has impacted your practice, because I know it's impacted everything. So that's great to hear that you're using it as an opportunity to sort of revisit and kind of challenge how far you can take these past subjects.
You can actually challenge yourself and take even just one painting in so many directions.
Yeah, and see how
by zeroing in and breaking it up and introducing new colors.
Yeah, well, it's really lovely to hear. And I'm wondering too, so when you complete a painting and you put this body of work out there for the world, what do you hope that viewers take away from your works?
I really hope that I transport a viewer to a place that makes them happy. But I mean, I have my story with my paintings, but I would love a viewer to have an emotional connection with my work so they can make their own story, I think.
That's a great story. Great. Well, thank you so much. These are such lovely and, like I said, luminous works. I love the lighting in Cheryl's pieces. So thank you so much, Cheryl.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Bethany.
Thank you. Yeah, well, so we'll
Thank you.
close out, and we'll bring Cheryl back at the end in case there are any questions about her work. But we're going to move on to our next artist, who's right here, Anthony Ponzo. Anthony, if you want to jump on your video. All right, cool.
Hello.
Nice to see you. Okay, let's see if I can get a nice overview of your booth here. All right, there we go. A little finicky for me. Okay, well, thank you so much for joining us, Anthony. Everyone, Anthony is a fine art photographer based in Sydney as well. So Anthony, to get us started, could you just tell us a little bit about your background as an artist and your journey to where you are today?
Yeah, sure. I've been taking photos for about 15 years, and I've always sort of enjoyed the traditional landscape photography, cityscape, beachscapes, that kind of thing. And then it was back about 4 or 5 years ago, I got the opportunity to travel to New Zealand, to the South Island, and I drove around there for 3 weeks. And I found myself on a charter flight up towards Mount Cook in the South Island. And then as we were flying over, I sort of talked to the pilot, and I sort of saw these amazing abstract turquoise blue waters and patterns below me. And it sort of just, I don't know, it just opened up this whole new world of landscapes that I had no idea existed before. So we scrapped the mission to go to Mount Cook. We started circling for about 60 minutes, and I just started taking photos nonstop. Different heights, different angles, and then not really knowing what I was getting. And then when I came back and started looking at the work, it was amazing. I'd never seen anything like it in my life before. So I sort of started down the old rabbit hole of abstract aerial landscapes, and here we are. They're the ones on the right-hand side of that gallery there. So
these are from New Zealand.
Yep, yeah, those 3 there. Yep.
That's lovely. And wow, so that's the origin story for the aerial photography, sort of a chance encounter on a trip.
Yeah, I've always been interested in abstract angles and shapes. It's always sort of interested me with my traditional landscape work. But it wasn't until, and for this New Zealand area, I'd actually driven up and down the side of the lake 7 or 8 times in the time I'd been in New Zealand. And I'd seen a little bit of the blue water, but I hadn't seen the patterns that you get to see from the air. And it wasn't until I'd seen it from above that it really just opened up this whole new world of these vascular sort of patterns that Mother Nature just creates by herself as the water's flowing down from the glaciers. It really did open up a whole new world of things for me.
Yeah, and I think that right off the bat, one of the things that stands out about Anthony's work are these abstract and I would say like quite painterly compositions that you come up with, and you bring out this painterly texture that's just inherent to the earth, and like you said, you're drawn to abstraction. So can you tell me a little bit about the conceptual reasoning behind that style?
Yeah, look, I've always liked, especially with this body of work with the abstract aerial, you're 100% correct, that the painterly sort of effect that happens with a lot of these salt lakes and even the New Zealand series. I really like people to second guess what they're looking at. And it really makes them sort of examine and rethink how it was shot, where it was photographed, and even what you're looking at. And yeah, I think that adding that little painterly effect, and it's all natural. It's not done in any editing sort of style. It's all actually how I saw it. But as I said, when you're seeing things from above, you just see a different world that you wouldn't even normally see, that I wouldn't normally see. And I think a lot of people wouldn't normally see as well. Often the areas are quite remote from capital cities. So you can only get there via plane or a fair few days driving off-road. So they're quite remote, and a lot of people probably haven't even seen the areas before. So
right, I bet it's amazing. And I was going to say, so yeah, you're known for capturing these remote locations. So I'm wondering if maybe anecdotally you might have a location to share, maybe where it was so remote that you felt out of your element, or that was maybe particularly awe-inspiring. Are there any
Yeah, well,
stand out?
there's a couple of funny stories that have come up with flying at 2,500 feet with the door open on the side of the plane and things like that. So that's always a little bit exciting. But look, I was flying over New Zealand on I think the third or fourth trip I was over there, and I don't normally get too airsick, but this time the pilot happened to be quite adventurous, I guess we'll say. And as the plane was banking a little bit too hard, he just kept going around and around in circles, thinking that he was doing the right thing, which he probably was. But unfortunately, yeah, I started to feel a little bit unwell. So I knew it was my last day in New Zealand, and so I had to stick it out. But after about 60 minutes, the pilot was pretty certain that he wanted to go more, and I went, no, let's head back to land. I need some solid footing under my feet. So
Yeah,
it's
I can
always fun.
imagine.
It really is an adventure drop, like flying that high. And because it's a private charter, you actually have full control of the plane with the pilot. So I get to control the height and the angles, and especially the locations. And it really gives me a lot more flexibility of being able to get the right angle at the right height, so that we still get those really nice details in the work, but you still get that really nice drawn out abstract angle. So.
Yeah, definitely. And so I'm wondering then too, so what would you say is the most awe-inspiring location that you've visited? Or is
Oh,
it
look,
always a surprise when you see the photos?
yeah, look, it would have to be the Pink Lakes, the one in the middle.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, this is a series of pink lakes over in Western Australia, about halfway up the coast. And from the ground, you can actually drive, again, you can drive up to the side of the lake. So if it's a little bit off the track, but you can actually drive up. And it looks very, a lot of people drive there and take some photos, and it looks quite pale pink. But again, it's not until you get above that you see these absolutely incredibly like ruby red colors. And I spent about 2 hours flying over there, just because as I was flying, I had to remember to take the camera away and actually just take it all in, because it was that amazing that I'd never seen anything those colors naturally before. It was absolutely incredible. So
Yeah, they are all natural, and I mean that's one of the amazing things about your work too, are these really bizarre natural colors that are out there, but we don't normally have the pleasure of seeing. So
yeah, I like to keep the work as natural as I can.
yeah,
They're not really super enhanced in Photoshop or whatever you want to say.
sure.
As I was seeing when I was flying. And they're quite remote, and a lot of people don't even know either what they're looking at or where they are, which I think, yeah, just adds that extra layer of mystery and intrigue to the shots.
Definitely. Yeah, they make you look twice.
Yeah.
So I'm also wondering, can you tell us a little bit about your materials, the paper, the printing, and sort of what clients can expect in terms of framing?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so look, I print all of my work on Canson 310 GSM fine art photo paper. They're printed using a professional photo lab here in Sydney. They've been printing my work for well over 10 years. And they do multiple award-winning works and a lot of exhibitions here in Sydney. Normally the work comes unframed when we purchase it on Saatchi Art. And it comes rolled up in a tube. They're all limited edition prints. So the largest print in the middle is 1 of 6 edition. The middle size is 1 of 10, and the smaller size is 1 of 20 limited edition prints. So they all come signed, numbered, a certificate of authenticity to provide with the customer. And the inks and the papers are rated for over 100 years.
Wow. Okay, well, thank you. That's definitely a common question that we get with buyers purchasing photography. So thanks for explaining the materials and process there. Well, it's a really awe-inspiring practice all around. So I'm really glad that we had the opportunity to highlight some of them today. So thank you so much for walking us through them. And we'll come back at the end for any questions that viewers might have for Anthony.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm going to jump back to the entrance right now so that we can head over to room 3 where our final artist is. Okay. Let's see, I don't want to catapult through here. Let's see. There we go. Right, if anyone watching plays video games, then you might be better at navigating this than I am. It's a really cool platform. And actually our next artist actually is right here at the beginning, Clinton Gorst. He's a collage artist based here in Sydney as well. But quite unlike our previous artists who are capturing the beauty of the world around us, Clinton uses collages to create surreal and entirely new places. So Clinton, if you'd like to come on video.
Hello.
Hi, it's good to see you again. All right, so Clinton, to start us off, can you just introduce yourself and share a bit about your background as an artist?
Yeah, so I started out collaging like at a very young age. Like my family always had music and records, and I always had like 7-inch records, but they never had, picture sleeves. And so I sort of started cutting out like images from, books and magazines and making my own record sleeves. And this was sort of like when I was about 10. And I guess, I didn't even know it, but that was sort of an early form of graphic design as well. And later, as I got older, I studied graphic design. So that's sort of my background. And at the same time, I was doing collage and things sort of escalated. I developed a style and I was doing cards and pictures for presents and all of that. And around the same time that I was studying, I had my first show in Wellington in New Zealand. And it was sort of like, oh, wow, this is like, people really responded to it. But then I've sort of separated the collage from graphic design because it's funny, it's sort of come together and then I've split it because I sort of view graphic design as more on a computer, whereas I'm very analog, and what you're seeing is this is my escape. Like I love getting materials and scissors and cutting out. So to me it's sort of separated very clearly again, but I've also learned a lot through studying design and composition and all of that. So
yeah,
it does help each other, but I sort of do view them quite separately now, especially as I've developed my style more and become more streamlined and all of that. Yeah, so it's been interesting.
Well, you mentioned that you're very analog with your collage practice. I'm wondering, can you tell us a little bit about your source material and your process for creating collages?
Yeah, so I've accumulated a vast library of vintage books that I mostly use. And like these range from all different categories, from architecture to like people to travel, space, books on animals, just depending what I'm wanting, I'll go and get a book specially or a few books. And so I've got lots of different categories. I don't tend to use magazines because they're more contemporary and sort of more, the paper stock's different, but also for copyright issues. Whereas I love like vintage, and it sort of is my area that I love in architecture from the 50s to 70s anyway. So it suits me really well to like have sort of more vintage style. So everything you're seeing is sort of like hand cut. I only use like original pages. I don't ever do color copies. So I only get one chance of cutting out. So I sort of put these little blocks on how I create, and it just forms. So I sort of start with a board and a subject, and then I form the story around. So it just depends like what it is, but like changing backgrounds can change something and direction. But generally I do have an idea of what I want to achieve, and I try and problem solve and create the final work. Also, like something else that I do is like my style is very clean. It's very, I try and aim to be as seamless as possible with collage. So if I have like a blunt edge from a piece of paper. I like to camouflage that and have something covering it. It's a lot of problem solving as well as creating, hopefully, a nice story at the end of it. And I sort of view like every picture has a story. And that's really important to me, that there is a story.
Right, that might emerge as you're making it.
Yeah, definitely.
Direction.
I love leaving like little details. You can like zoom in and discover little bits and go back and repeated views and see like a little person somewhere or whatever. And
well, and it was
part of the discovery.
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, there's a lot to discover in each piece. I think they can keep a viewer they can keep a viewer busy for a while, even though they are some of them are quite small in scale. But you mentioned architecture. Can you talk a little bit more about how architecture impacts your practice? I know that you take inspiration from your hometown as well.
Yeah, so like I grew up from an Art Deco town. So like I always was quite aware of architecture, even growing up. And I do like Art Deco, but I think my favorite is sort of modernism and brutalist architecture. And yeah, like I said, I've collected a lot of books on different architectural things, and I love creating my own buildings. I think a part of me always wanted to be an architect, and I did think about doing that for a while, but then engineering and mathematics, I was like, okay, maybe it's not me. So why don't I just create my own buildings in my mind and make it how I want to be anyway. So
right, and you don't have to worry about physics with these.
No, exactly.
Right. Yeah, well, it's a very, I mean, it's such unique works. And so I'm wondering, so I know that you have a new series coming out, I believe, that's sort of influenced by climate change. I'm wondering if you tell us about that series, along with any other major narratives that are kind of common threads throughout your work, if any.
I don't have them on show in this, but at the actual fair that was just on, I did have a lot of my climate series. I don't know if you're aware, but like before COVID, Sydney was in like major smoke for months, and it was so dry, and it was just like it was a real like moment. It was everything turned orange, the grass had gone brown, like everything was just quite. And I was just like, I have to do something about this. Like I wanted to use my art form as a way to show what's going on. It was like, in a way, like what can I do? And I wanted to do that. So I created a whole series of like wild weather, basically, with dried up lakes is one, and then another lot with like melting glaciers and just all sort of wild weather, and tried to create different little snapshots and collage of the wild weather patterns. And one of them was a very large scale piece, the largest I've ever created. And I created an oasis, and it was in a big geodome with, you know, where animals could roam freely and, you know, like flowing mineral water. It was my way of having sort of a sci-fi, is this the way we're going? Like, you know, like question, because it was just like, when is this going to end in Sydney? So that became a big thing, and the big smoke background. So yeah, it sort of forced me to look at my surroundings, and also the, you know, influence of weather globally, you know.
Yeah, and it sounds like the collage practice became sort of a therapeutic way to process that too.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, I think as viewers can see, Clinton has quite a few red dots on these. That means these have sold, but you can definitely, he has a few still available, and you can check out his profile in Saatchi Art for more. Hoping we see more uploads from you soon as well. And I want to go ahead and take us back to the entrance. Clinton, don't turn off just quite yet, because actually Clinton designed the graphic for our fair that we can see here, this lovely virtual mural. So I'm wondering if you can tell us, I mean, speaking about an oasis, I thought of this work too when you were describing that. I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit about this design.
Oh, this was actually part of the piece that I was just telling you about, except I changed it for this mural. And instead of having the billowing smoke behind, I just made a little bit more pretty by having sort of space and like the animals with birds and with jewels in their beaks, and just sort of, I wanted it to, I thought with butterflies and all of that, like just make it a happy picture and create like this oasis where everyone can be and live in harmony. You know, I'm a bit of a hippie at heart. So.
Sure. Well, it's very refreshing after the events of the past year to have really optimistic work at the fair. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, actually, if everyone else wants to go ahead and come back on, I'm going to see if I can stop sharing my screen. Okay, so I'm not sure if we have any questions from viewers. Looks like there aren't any at the moment. So I just wanted to say, if anyone has any questions, of course you have through this Sunday to visit these artist booths. You can shoot them an email, schedule time to speak with them. You can click through to purchase their work directly online. If you have any questions for us, feel free to reach out to us at Saatchi Art as well. Thank you all again for joining. It was such an honor to highlight your work. And hope you
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Bethany.
Thank you. All right, well, that concludes our tour. So thank you, everyone.